Thanks for joining EAC Product Development Solutions today. My name is Sierra Mickler, and I'll be managing this event for all of us. So today we're going to be talking about some admin tools that Onshape offers. All right, I'm going to hand things over to Bill so he can show us around some admin tools in Onshape. Hey, Bill.
Hey, Sierra. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thanks for attending today's webcast. And we will be covering the ease at which you can administer Onshape. I'm going to start with a PowerPoint. We'll kind of introduce a lot of the concepts here. So first of all, Onshape, totally cloud-based. That means administration is cloud-based. I can access and do my administrative tasks from a laptop, from a tablet, from my phone, wherever I am. So it makes it really easy to do that. And if you're going to be doing this kind of work, you have to have real easy interface and also easy to get at and use capabilities. So today's presentation won't take the full 30 minutes that we typically do when we go through a typical demonstration of Onshape capabilities. So as we can see, Onshape has a lot of things to it in the cloud. Certainly CAD capabilities, being able to do workflows. Sierra mentioned that. Coming in November, we'll be talking about some workflows. There's data management, bills of materials, security, communication, so on and so forth. We're going to focus on administration today. So I'm going to select on this, just kind of cover a couple of the slides. First of all, it's a web-based tool, just as Onshape is. And what allows us to do is administer CAD data management, also different applications. There is an app store, so we can add other applications to augment the capabilities of Onshape, maybe toolpaths, finite element analysis, photorealistic rendering, things like that. Also, we can add and remove people very easily. And we can admin, like I said, just about from anywhere. As long as we have access to the internet, we have access to our abilities to do administration tasks. So the first thing I want to talk about is the typical setting up of users that we're used to seeing. And it's always been this way for at least as long as we've had CAD. First of all, you need to get a PO to purchase the software, and then you want to go in and start to get your license codes, because you need license codes to run the software. You need to set up your hardware, put on virus protection and other things that you might have in your company standard setup. Also, we want to then download the CAD software, and if there's PM, we need to install that as well. And then we ship the whole bunch of hardware and software off to the new employees. And then we can kind of integrate them into the network. And this is the typical process that we go through to put people onto our network. But in the Onshape world, it's a lot different. All we do is we need the new hire's email address, and we invite him to Onshape, and they have instant access right away. So let's talk about some other things about this. There's a couple different flavors of licensing in Onshape. And the first one that the majority of people get is called the professional license. And if you watched any of our videos before, I always make use of all of those capabilities. So that gives you the ability to edit files, gives you the ability to certainly share that data. And then also we have a built-in comment capability, so we can communicate back and forth using that. Also, certainly we have access to the built-in release management capabilities of Onshape. We can create custom metadata. So if there are particular user-defined attributes that we have for something, we can add those in. The typical things like material and description and things like that are already built in, but we might have some other things that we might want to, if we're dealing with piping, and maybe pipe size is a particular attribute that we want to have, being able to call out not only in bills of materials, but maybe in a title block or anything else. And again, also I mentioned before the App Store, so we can work with other outside applications along that work with Onshape. And then we also have kind of the capabilities and workflows where I kind of consider that action items, where we can assign a task to somebody to accomplish something. So that kind of shows up in their to-do list, and then they can just kind of, once they're completed, they can check it off. It's removed from their to-do list. So it's just a way of communicating and setting up kind of a structure for how we want things to be done. So that's the professional license. And like I said, in most of the presentations that we've done in the past, we kind of cover a lot of these capabilities. There's another license as well. It's called the enterprise license. And this gives you more capabilities for administrative type tasks. The capabilities for creating geometry and all of those things on the CAD end are the same, but it gives us a lot of other capabilities. I wanted to kind of hit on those a little bit if I have this opportunity here to talk about administration. So first of all, it has all the capabilities certainly of the professional license, but then it really divides users up into a couple of types of users. There's a full user, which is like your typical professional license user, right? It has the capabilities of editing, sharing, releasing data, things like that. And then there's a concept of a light user. So those are people that typically would just be viewing things. So a light user license is actually way less than a full user license, right? Because they're just viewing things. But that gives you the ability to open, leave comments just along with everybody else. And you can also export data if you need to pull out the information as a, I don't know, a step file or something like that. So these full and light users can then be broken down into being either members or guests. And so members are your typical user, right? Just like the same guys we've been talking about with the professional license and the full access. But guests are different. They have kind of a limited time access, and they are exposed to only explicit information that we give them. So think of it maybe as a contract worker or maybe a vendor or a client where you have access to this for a month or 6 months, and then you no longer have access to it. So if we look in this little kind of a spreadsheet that I have here, we have a full user. Those are your typical engineers, designers, admin people. If we have a guest status, yeah, it's maybe a guest status of a full user. Those would be like a contractor. Like I said, we're going to hire this guy for 3 months, so we're going to give him access to these files, and then he can create his own certainly. But after that 3 months, he goes away. We can always change that timing, but kind of the idea of a guest is that they're just a guest for a little while. You don't want your guests to stay forever. Then we talk about the light user. And a light user, again, has pretty much just viewing capabilities, but cross sections, measurements, all those types of things. So that'd be sales, marketing, internal people to our company that still need access to information that's being generated by the designers and the engineers, but they just might need to look at it or maybe do some screenshots or gain some information from it in some way or the other. And then if we have a guest version of a light user, those would be just, we have a particular vendor or clients that we're working with. Maybe we're, asking for bids on something. So we give them access to a couple of drawings for, the next 2 weeks, and they can supply us with some bids or something like that. So different ways of kind of breaking up the typical user in using this enterprise license. Another thing that it allows us to do is create a project. So a project is basically we take a group of people and we say, they're going to have different rights. They can have different rights than they typically would in the rest of the system. But basically, these people are going to work on a particular task or develop a product or review something. And so what we can do is create a project, invite these people to it. We can have their own kind of hierarchy. Are they managers? Are they users of the project? Are they just viewers of the project? We can set all of that up, and then we can kind of divide up the work in terms of projects if we wanted to do that. And then one thing that Onshape, because it's cloud-based, is really good at is monitoring activity. So analytics. It's very good for giving you a lot of information about what the users are doing, how much activity they've had, where their activity is coming from. I'll show you a little bit of that at the end. It's pretty interesting, all the information that's gathered by Onshape. So that's my PowerPoint portion of today. What I wanted to do is just go in and take a look at Onshape itself. So this is my homepage. We always kind of start out here where we can see different products I've been working on and different folders that I might have access to. But today when we're talking about administration, I'm going to go over here to enterprise settings. So this is where we can create users and a variety of other things. So I'll kind of work our way down the list a little bit, but here are the users that we have here at EAC. And we can see that, here's me, here's Sierra. There's somebody we don't have on here, and he didn't talk today, but he's here, and that's Ryan. So I can go in and say, I want to invite somebody. All I have to do, as I mentioned before, really all we need is somebody's email address and just go in and enter that. I'm going to say, yeah, let's make them a full user, and we'll just say send an invitation. So now we've sent an invitation out, and let's see if he shows up. Well, Ryan, I know you're listening, so you'll probably get an email inviting you to be a user, a full user. And you notice we have different users here. Here we have a light user who's just a guest. So again, that's kind of a temporary user. But most of us are all kind of full users here in the system. Now, another thing that we can do is we have this big group of people. We can also go in and say, I want to go in and make different groups of people and kind of group them together. That way, if I send out information, I can send it out to a group of people, or just different ways of organizing things. So we have some default ones here, engineers, managers, and things like that. I could say, let's create a new team. And this team could be, let's call it our webinars team. And we could, I could put in a description, and we'll say, let's save that webinars team. It says you haven't added any users to it, so I'm going to say, let's add some. So the users I want to add, let's add me in there. And let's add Sierra. Let's see if Ryan, I don't know if Ryan's going to be in here yet or not. So we're all in there. So now we have a new team made up of us three. And again, if we needed to have some information that all of us would get, we just send it to the webinars team, and away we would go with that. There's global permissions. And again, this is sort of like, what things can people do? So I'm kind of an administrator, so I can administer users like I just did. We can also come in here and manage user teams. We can invite guest users, so the manager groups can do that. So this is just basically the different teams and different types of people. So anybody can look at the analytics. People can create projects the way that we have it set up here. We can create document folders. Here we can create releases or approve releases in the release process that we have. Allow access to the App Store. Of course, everybody has access to that, but really administering maybe the apps, not necessarily everybody would be able to do that. And then we can also share data that might be from an anonymous user who can do that thing. So it's just kind of general different things like that. Authentication, that has to do with security. So we can have two-factor, really high level security, or just single user sign-on, things like that. I mentioned projects before. So if I wanted to create a project, I could say, let's create a new one. And this project could just be called maybe events that we hold. And I'll say, let's save that. And again, there's kind of a default setup that we have for projects, and it automatically kind of organizes it into the different users and things like that. I'm gonna put in a description, let's just say, for all events, just so we have that showing up as well. So now we have a project started. I can start inviting people to that. Once we have that set up, then we can start adding information to it. We can either create the information, we can drag and drop information into the project, or we can just move it in there from somewhere else in the system. So lots of different ways of kind of organizing and creating these projects to work on certain things. So for all future events, I could invite the three of us there, and we can kind of collaborate together on that. Permission schemes, that's again, what do managers do? What do reviewers do? Things like that. Custom properties, I kind of mentioned that before. The system comes with some default properties, things of that nature. I created one in here. I think I called it source right here. But this is just a user-defined property. I just said, if we make a product, is it either made by us or is it bought, right? So the source is it a purchase product or made in-house type of thing? And there's this concept of categories, a little kind of higher level, but this is a list of maybe 15 or 20 different kind of user-defined parameters that are out there, or metadata. As like with people, as you get older, you gain more and more. So as we get more and more mature with Onshape, we're going to have more and more of these properties. So what categories allows us to do is break them down so just certain parameters or metadata apply to certain types of products. For instance, if I were making pumps, So gallons per minute or horsepower is important to people or a group that makes pumps, but to the rest of the company, they don't care about horsepower or gallons per minute necessarily. So we would not have them be exposed to those. Just the pump guys would be seeing things like that. So it's just a way of breaking this down again, sort of like we're doing with teams, kind of breaking people down into different groups where we can break these different properties as they tend to grow over time. So one last thing that I did mention also is that Onshape's very good with seeing what the user does, analytics, and things of that nature. So I'm just going to go here to our analytics, and I'm going to look at my activity. So we're going to get to see what I've been doing lately. But when I select on that, it gives me a lot of information, different files that I've imported. So I've imported a lot, haven't exported so much, created a lot of files, or I guess I should say part studios. Did a lot of sharing with that. Spent about 20, this is in the last 30 days. Elements, things that I have created, and documents that I've opened. Here's a nice little bar graph of where I've spent most of my time on different things. Here we can see this is the part studio, which is this gray area here. And then we also have assemblies and drawings. So I don't do too much with drawings, a little bit more with assemblies lately, not too much at all, because this is as of today. But I still do a lot with the part studio, which is basically where we spend most of our time creating and modeling things. Here it is kind of a breakdown over the last 30 days, which days I've been working, which days in Onshape. I'm still working these days, but just not using Onshape. And then over here, we can take a look at where I'm signing in. So Bolingbrook, Illinois is where I live. So I've spent all my time in the last 30 days in Bolingbrook. Over here, though, is interesting. The different devices that I use to access Onshape. So here I'm spending majority of my time, 68%, using it in Windows 10, which is my laptop. But you'll notice I also spend about 32% using my phone. And an interesting thing, I kind of bring this up fairly frequently, is that about 1 in 8 people that are using Onshape at that particular time are using it on their phone. And I'm using a little bit more than that, right? So I'm about a third of the time almost using my phone. And part of it's just because, I'll do demonstrations, or I'll show people how you can access Onshape. And then I guess the other part is just because I can. It's just really fun. It's so convenient. I always have my phone with me. And if I need to go and get access something or get some information, I usually just use my phone if I'm not sitting at my desk or am at home at all. So this is kind of a quick little summary of administering Onshape, but hopefully you come across with the idea that it is very easy. There's a tremendous amount of information that Onshape drives that can be used as an administrator to kind of gain insights into how the system is being used and things like that. So with that, I'm going to turn things back